because I get this question all the time. Well, I can't switch from Vim to Emacs because what if I'm remote into some server that doesn't have Emacs? It doesn't matter. You remote from your machine that has Emacs on it from inside Emacs, and you can still use your Emacs on this machine.
And I noticed that your headings in org mode are bigger, because I know a little bit about org mode only. Like, is that a default thing in Emacs? Like, you can make the headings bigger? I don't know if you have any thoughts on PewDiePie's video.
The headers of the table of contents and the descriptions, these are all just part of the literate config, the org document.
I just want to hear your thoughts on macOS. Let's go with that first.
So my thoughts on macOS is, if I need a terminal, I could do, in my case, space TV is the key binding I have to toggle on vterm. Vterm is one of the terminal emulators here inside Emacs.
And I assume you can also configure SSH key-based authentication in Emacs, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm pretty wordy as far as describing things. Like I tell you, hey, this block, this is what I'm doing. That's why.
Does it keep growing exponentially once you reach a certain point?
No. Yeah. Because I remember, really caring about my analytics in the first 2 or 3 years.
What are your thoughts on Windows?
Oh, so
if I lose one of my 3 storage servers, I have them here. Where are they? VMs. These are my storage servers, storage 1, 2, and 3, right? So I can lose one of them and I can still keep it working. I know I should be using something else like Ceph.
Yeah, when I retire from YouTube, I'm putting Debian back on my computer.
If you're listening to this as a podcast, remember that it was originally recorded as a video. If you're not following along, you can go to my YouTube channel. My username is Linkarzu. And if you want to support me to keep this podcast going, you can donate in Ko-fi. I'm going to leave a link in the description. All right, so let's get started with this chapter then.
What do we have today? We have DT, Derek, DistroTube on the call. How's it going, man?
Man, I'm doing just lovely. I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee this morning, and I'm just trying to get by. Appreciate you inviting me. We're going to have I'm sure, just a great conversation about Linux, Mac, possibly some Windows talk.
Exactly. Yep. I have watched your videos, because when you look for Linux on YouTube, what do you think shows up? DistroTube. A lot of folks show up, but you show up most of the times, right? So
I've made a lot of videos, so I mean, I've spammed the YouTube algorithm a little bit. Right?
When did you get started with YouTube, and why? Why did that happen?
Started in October of 2017 with the DistroTube channel. That was the first YouTube channel I'd ever had. First time I ever made a video, period, I got started making videos about Linux because there wasn't a lot of Linux content back then. There was some, but it was a much smaller space because this was before there was no Steam on Linux back then, right? Which was a total game changer. Back when that happened, there was, a lot of the bigger distributions that are around now, like Manjaro, I think, was just getting started. Things like that. Pretty much the only desktop Linux distribution people really knew back then was Ubuntu. Still very popular.
Yep.
But, it was just much smaller space, and a lot of the people that did Linux content, the few that did, I didn't like the way they did it. Because they didn't focus necessarily on the free software and open source software, part of the Linux ecosystem. Like, they were just talking about Linux like it's just another desktop operating system, just like Windows and Mac. It's like, no, it's not really. The philosophy behind it all certainly is a much bigger part than necessarily the technology, in my opinion. And a lot of people didn't focus on that at all, or they tried to ignore it. And there were a lot of Linux content creators that actively tried to downplay open source. Like they didn't want to talk about it that way because they thought that was a negative thing, which I thought that's kind of weird. So, that was part of why I started doing what I'm doing.
Oh, when you started doing the videos, then Linux wasn't too popular.
It wasn't as popular as it is now. We've probably, I bet we've at least doubled our desktop market share since then.
Okay.
Yeah, it was smaller because really, when you look at a lot of the numbers, which you don't have any really reliable stats, but if you look at global market share as far as like with Stat Counter and things like that, we're maybe around 4% now. You don't know. I know we weren't at 2% though when I started. I know that we were under that number for sure because we never had a reading above 2% that I can remember until just a few years ago, and then it went pretty quickly from 2 to 3, and pretty quickly from 3 to 4 now. So it's definitely, there's a lot of reasons for that. Steam was a big reason. The Steam Deck now I think is a big reason because obviously that's getting factored into some of those figures. So that was really a big deal, was the gaming.
Okay, I see that you have around 264,000 subscribers, 1,600 videos. That's a lot. What do you talk about in your channel? Is it Linux only, or?
As far as operating systems, it's Linux only for the most part because that's the only operating system I use. It's the only operating system I have used probably in, I don't know, 16 years, 18 years. It's been a long time since I had a machine that ran Windows, was what I was running before I moved to Linux full time. And I haven't used a Mac. I had to use Macs in college, like computer labs and things. That was in the 1990s, so it's not the Mac, right? It's not modern Mac. So I don't know much about Mac OS these days.
Okay.
Played with it in virtual machines. Same thing with Windows. I've run like Windows 11 and a VM a time or two if I need to for whatever. If I need to do something on camera, for example, because sometimes I will do funny things with videos on with Windows on camera. Right? I spin up a virtual machine for that typically.
I had a call with Shasten. He has a channel. He was called Tinkerbell Linux, I think, and now he changed the name of his channel. And he talked about this coreutils, that they're being rewritten. I know we're going somewhere else right now, but what are your thoughts? I haven't watched this video. What are your thoughts there? He does not agree to that rewrite. Are your thoughts the same?
Well, it's just there's a group of developers that have rewritten the GNU coreutils using Rust. Because the GNU coreutils, of course, are written in C. I don't mind people that rewrite things just because they're learning a programming language. We all do it. We start learning a language and we rewrite some simple thing, right? Using that language. I don't mind that, but when Linux distributions, especially big server distributions, for example, like Ubuntu, want to replace like the core components of the operating system for no reason, like why are you switching out the coreutils? Right, that's like the major part of the operating system. That and the kernel. I mean, that's like I don't know. It's weird because there's nothing wrong with the GNU coreutils. They're not switching because there's something wrong with these coreutils. I mean, the coreutils have been around for 40 years. Whenever GNU first started, back in the mid 1980s or whatever, started working on what would be the operating system. Nobody has ever complained and said, "Oh, the GNU coreutils, they're bad. We need to swap them out." That's just weird. Like it's kind of random. There's a vice president that works at Canonical that he's a programmer. He's a fan of Rust. And he wants to swap it out for reasons I don't know. There's no real reason. It's other than he likes Rust, and that's it. It's like, well, that's not a great reason to do that. Especially these coreutils that are written in Rust, they're not 100% a drop-in replacement just yet. Some of them still, when they test them, they still have failures. So it's not there's going to be some issues with it. You're not just going to swap it out and it's going to, magically everything just works. Obviously, there's going to be some breakage. So why go through that if there's no real reason to go through that, is my thoughts. So, okay.
There could be something, I don't know, some hidden agenda there, conspiracy theories. I don't know.
I don't know what some of the conspiracy theories, I wouldn't say it's a conspiracy theory, but Rust rewrite of the coreutils. The package is called the uutils. But it's licensed not under the GPL. It's licensed, I believe, under the MIT license. I could be wrong about that. Maybe the BSD license. I think it's the MIT license. It's a permissive license, though. It's not the GPL. And that's a problem for some people, because part of the core component of our GNU / Linux operating system is the fact that the coreutils and the kernel are all GPL software. And that's part of why I think, in my opinion, why Linux has lasted as long as it has, why it's become much more popular in recent years on the desktop, but obviously dominates the server space. And a lot of that has to do with all of these millions of contributors around the world over the years that have contributed to the Linux kernel, and the licensing is a big part of why they did that. So we don't want to mess with that either. Again, if something's working, why mess with it?
Yeah, makes sense. Something out of topic. I don't see a video here in your channel. I don't know if you have any thoughts on PewDiePie's video, which became very
I haven't
popular.
watched it.
No?
I haven't watched it. It's not the kind of content I would typically watch for fun.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people wanted me to watch it just so I can make a video about it, but I don't know. Just watching somebody say, "Hey, I'm running Linux," that's not something interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
As far as PewDiePie, though, I know, like, he started. I've never watched a single minute of any video of this guy, but I know he's a gamer, right?
I don't know.
So it kind of makes sense why he kind of knows what Linux is here, with Steam and the Steam Deck. Like, it's not that unusual that somebody like him has played with Linux a little bit. So it's not like some random person, like, your grandmother tried Linux, like it's somebody that's complete tech noob, right? I'm sure this guy, he can make Linux work. Like, it's not a shock that he's playing with Linux.
Yeah, but what are your thoughts on him bringing a lot of users or people to Linux? Are you okay with that? What do you think?
I have no problems with Linux getting popular. So I know some people actually do for whatever weird reason. But for me, I don't care. As far as if we gain market share, great. If we don't, that's great too. I'm not running Linux because it's popular. I'm just running it because it's what I like, what works for me. I don't worry about, a lot of people worry about how popular the software they run it is. Is my operating system popular? Is the Linux distribution that I run, is it one of the more popular ones? Do people talk about it? The text editor I use, is it popular? I don't care about any of that. Like, if it works for me, if it was what I like, I run it, and I don't try to tell people what to run either. Mm-hmm. I don't care what software you use, right? Okay. Some people do, though. It's kind of weird.
There's always sides, right? So they want us to take sides, I think. So I'm on the same boat as well. As long as it works for me, I don't really care, And I have people that talk about Emacs in the channel, and we discuss Emacs. I want to learn Emacs, I use Neovim. That's my main editor, but I want to learn about other stuff, I don't have to be on one side only, So people can find you on YouTube.
That's where I put everything. I do have a channel also on Odysee for people that want to watch me somewhere that's not YouTube.
Okay.
So that's available for people, obviously. But mainly YouTube is where I'm at. Okay.
I see it here, Odysee, in the links. Well, everything is in here in the links. Okay.
Right.
Wonderful. And what I want to know more about your background. This is just to motivate people that is trying to get started in all this and to get to know how it all started. So why did you end up in tech? How did all that happen? You want to share that?
Well, I mean, I guess I ended up in tech if you count being a YouTuber, being in tech, but I'm not trained in any professional way in any tech-related field. I don't have college degrees in tech. I actually went to college for music. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in music performance, and went to school for that. Jobs after that, taught a little bit because of music. Don't want to be a teacher though. didn't like that. Or I don't mind being an educator. I didn't like teaching public school.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
But you know, and after that, you know, I've worked many years in retail, you know, in supervisory roles, various retail companies until I started my channel in 2017. I was still working at the time, obviously. COVID, though, in 2020, when the shutdown happened here in the U.S., I was not going to have a job when I returned from the shutdown because the company I was working at was doing pretty poorly before COVID. They were about to file bankruptcy. They were going to scale back a lot of positions. And one of the positions they were going to cut was the position I held. So when COVID happened, I was already doing YouTube. It was a side gig. It just became the gig. So I've been doing this. But I do see YouTube as an extension of me being a teacher.
Yep.
So one of the things I love is teaching people how to use some of this software, how to use things like Vim and Emacs and various shell utilities, you know, the GNU coreutils, how to do some scripting, programming, things like, you know, some basic stuff that a lot of people fear until somebody kind of explains it. And I'm pretty good at talking in a understandable, deliberate way and getting people through some topics that they think are hard. So that's always been a strength of mine. That's kind of what I was doing even at my jobs. You know, typically my positions were usually HR or training related, you know, teaching people, you know, whatever. So it's always kind of been how I saw myself. So I think YouTube is a great extension for, again, just educating people on anything. And anybody can do this. Anybody, because I hear from people all the time, you know, I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel. It looks fun, but I don't know what I want to do. It's like, well, everybody has life experience. Everybody knows something about something. And trust me, there will be people that watch that content about the stuff you know. You know, so just start the camera recording. Just put the first video out. It's not going to be a good video. Yeah. Your first video is not going to, the audio is going to suck, right? Because that crappy $10 microphone you bought at Walmart, trust me, it's going to suck, right? But put the first video out. Once you get started, you know, then you'll quickly figure out what works, what doesn't. And, you know, eventually you'll figure out how this whole content creation game works.
Man, my first videos, I recorded them with my AirPods, with my headphones. Man, the audio sucks. You hear the echo. Still, my audio sucks, but not that much compared to the first videos. And I gave up, you know. I recorded like, I don't know, 10 videos, a playlist, you know, how to get started with macOS, like advanced stuff in macOS. What I was expecting success right away. No,
right.
Didn't happen. Gave up, stopped for 3 months. And then I decided I'll keep doing this, you know, but I'll do it because I want to do it. And here we are, like a year after.
When I started, I did have a proper webcam. I had a Logitech webcam, which was okay. Kind of like, I think it's the C920, kind of like a standard webcam that a lot of people start using with YouTube. I happen to have one, which was great because I didn't go into this planning to do YouTube videos. I was just using whatever I happened to have. I happened to have that camera, which was good. The mic on that camera, though, because it does have a built-in mic, it's horrible. Well, I had another mic, and it had no markings on it. It didn't even say what brand it was. All it said was made in China. And that thing was just barely better than the camera audio microphones. Like it was, the audio on, you know, my first few videos was so bad. I was like, man, if I'm going to take this seriously, you know, like I've got to do something. Like I got to upgrade. It can't just be using whatever random microphone I found in a junk drawer somewhere that I pulled out. Don't even know what brand it is. So I went and bought a Blue Yeti.
Oh,
I think I found a Blue Yeti at Best Buy. I went to Best Buy, and they actually had, you know, like for gamers, you know, they had microphones and stuff. And it's like, oh, that one looks all right. I think I paid $100 for it at the time, and that was like 1,000,000 times better for audio. And then, of course, you know, as you go along, you know, I got better equipment along the way.
Would you recommend someone starting a channel nowadays? You said yes already, but
Oh yeah. Yeah, because I think a lot of people are under this misconception that YouTube is kind of saturated because there's, so many YouTubers and so many, billions of billions of hours of videos that get uploaded like every month. And it's not saturated because people are consuming that content, and a lot of it is garbage, automated spam, AI crap. Unfortunately, YouTube is kind of overrun with that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So people like listening to a real human being actually really talk and just discuss things. So yeah, I don't think it's saturated at all. I think people just need to get started. If anybody that has considered it, just get started. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You make a couple of videos and you realize, oh, I'm not very good at this, or this is a lot of work, which it is a lot of work. A lot of people don't realize how much work goes into it.
Oh, man.
But hey, so you do it, you make a few videos over a few weeks or a few months, you realize, you know what, not really into that. Okay, well, what are you out? A few hours of work?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, I think you have to know what to expect, right? Because I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, and it didn't happen. So you have to have the right expectations, I guess. It's going to take time, right? How long did it take for you to see results? Was it in the first year? Did it take longer than that?
No. I was actually shocked because when I started my YouTube channel, I knew what YouTube was. I watched some YouTube. That's why I knew there was some Linux content, but it wasn't a lot. But I didn't expect anybody really to watch anything I did. And I became monetized, I think, within 3 months. So I had to get, 1,000 subs and like 4,000 watch hours or something.
Yep.
Or the watch time was really easy because I got a lot of views on some of those early videos. More views than I thought I would. And I was kind of shocked that people were interested in Linux content. The subs were a little harder to come by, but I got a shout out from another bigger Linux content creator somewhere along the way. That channel was called Big Daddy Linux. He's not around anymore.
Oh,
but he helped get me to the 1,000 sub mark, within 2 or 3 months after starting my channel. And from there, by the end of the first year of my channel, I don't remember. It's been so long ago. I bet I had 30 or 40,000 subs after a year.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, and it just keeps going. So.
Okay. Does it keep growing exponentially once you reach a certain point?
No. Yeah. Because I remember, really caring about my analytics in the first 2 or 3 years. I paid attention. Views did I get today? How many subs did I get? I go check my dashboard. It has been seriously years. I do go into my YouTube dashboard to upload. I never check the analytics anymore.
Oh.
I don't focus on it anymore. I don't care if I get any new subs, new view, because it does, you get burnt out trying to play that game.
Yep.
Now I just make the videos I want to make. People watch them, great. They don't watch them, that's fine too. I still made the video I wanted to make, right? And doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember, I think it was late 2020, early 2021, the second time I came down with COVID. Because I remember getting sick. And I remember the channel then had like 160, 170,000 subs. And I was really pushing myself hard, putting out a lot of content all the time. And some of these videos that took a lot of effort, hours of prep work and learning new things. And I think me pushing myself kind of hard was part of the reason that I was getting sick.
Okay.
Because I'm not somebody that gets sick very often. It's rare. I come down with anything. Like, damn, got COVID 2 or 3 times in this year, right? This is a COVID year, though. But it was like, hey, I shouldn't be getting this like this. Yeah. So I kind of backed off a little bit. I made a, kind of in my head, I had told myself, okay, you know what? You're going to slow down. You're going to keep working, obviously. But, we're not, I'm not so concerned about the analytics anymore. Let's just say that.
Yeah. That's healthier, definitely. You want to share two of your favorite music bands to get to know you there, since you're into music.
Well, my music degrees, obviously I was a classical musician, so I'm mostly into classical music. But as far as popular music,
piano or what instrument?
My main instrument is trombone.
Okay.
I play a few different things, but trombone was my main instrument.
Okay.
And people can check out some of my trombone playing on the YouTube channel. I have played it in the past. Actually, I've played the recorder on the channel in the past a few times. I might have played the harmonica once or twice. I've got some music stuff. Oh, and there's some rap videos as well, me rapping. But you don't view those. But yeah, as far as popular music, some of my favorite bands, for people that are into metal, I'm not a big metal fan, but if you one of my favorite metal musicians from the 80s and 90s is King Diamond.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. He is, black metal musician, but he is really interesting just from his style, very artsy. Like he actually tells a story. He basically writes a novel and turns it into an album. Each track is a chapter of the story. And he, with his voice inflection, he acts out various characters in the story through music. And it's very interesting stuff.
Okay.
So I really like that for that particular genre. For me, growing up, I was born in the 70s, but I grew up in the 80s. So I'm a big fan of 80s hair metal, 80s rock bands, bands like Bon Jovi and Def Leppard and Journey, all that 80s hair music was just, that's the best stuff ever. And,
do you like
that's
Skid Row?
Oh yeah. Skid Row was unfortunate in their timing, because by the time they came around, that genre was on the way out because of the rise of grunge. Once Nirvana came out, the hair band era was over, like instantly. So Skid Row, they really, their first album came out in like 89 or 90. So they barely had like a couple of years before, all that was over anyway. So, but yeah, their albums were great though. They put out some amazing music.
Okay, so you're more focused, or you like more metal, rock type of music, right?
All genres. I was mentioning those because the audience probably is familiar with those artists. Right? Didn't want to go down the classical route, but I mean, I listen to. I don't like a lot of modern music, so like with rock, anything prior to like the mid 90s is okay in my book. But once we get into all the auto tune, drum track BS. I'm not like, you can't hire a real drummer, really? Like, and you don't think I can tell that that's not a real human being playing these instruments? Like it sounds very soulless. It's just not, it's not good. But don't get me started on that. So I listen to a lot of older rock, country music, again, older country mostly, because again, modern music, a lot of times, not that great. Like some old reggae, like reggae, some of the old rap, hip hop stuff, that when I was, say, in high school or in college, that was popular. So the earlier stuff with folks like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and then Tupac and Biggie, right? Love all that. The new stuff, not as good, but. Again, maybe I'm just a boomer, right?
Yeah, I like old music as well. 80s, 90s music. 80s is my favorite. I like listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Earth, Wind, and Fire was awesome.
Yeah,
of course. Being a trombone player, any group that has a brass section, so Earth, Wind, and Fire, yeah, awesome.
Yeah. What is this other one?
Chicago is another one. You know Chicago,
yeah,
especially from the 60s and 70s, when actually one of their founding members, Jim Pankow, is the trombone player. He actually founded the group. Yeah.
And what about Kool and the Gang? They have a brass section too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody loves Kool and the Gang.
Yeah,
you can't go to a party without hearing Celebration. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And what about movies? You like movies? You want to share two with us?
Yeah. You know what? Again, I'm going to sound like a boomer, but movies have gone way downhill, say in the last 10, 15 years. It is all CGI all the time. And I can't stand it. But movies that I actually like, as far as favorite movies of all time, one of my all-time favorites is Aliens. James Cameron's Aliens. That movie, I just watch it all the time. Like anytime it's on, I got to watch the whole thing. And it's a longer movie. It's like a 2.5 hour movie. Like it's an investment, but it's such a damn good movie. Just the acting, it's hilarious. Some of the lines in it, especially Bill Paxton's character in that movie, just cracks me up. And then, of course, the action, a lot of shooting, explosions, and the horror elements as well. It's like the perfect movie in my view. And it's all practical effects. This was before CGI was even a thing, right? Yeah. So the creatures and everything, they had to actually build those puppets and those models, and it looks so good. If they made that movie now, it would be such a turd.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't build the first set, the first actual model, it would just all be computerized.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be nearly.
And you can tell. Yeah.
Yes.
People from the old school can tell. I guess I don't know if younger generations care about that or not, but yeah, I do care.
I think a lot of them do, because I've noticed some young people, when they go back and look at like classic sci-fi horror movies, anything with a creature or a monster, they're like, oh, that looks really good. It doesn't look like this Marvel movie I just watched that, you can tell. But, when they see, I don't know, things like Alien or John Carpenter's The Thing. I don't know if you're familiar with, but that thing, whoever did the special effects on that, props to you, guy, because that's an amazing movie. Like, I still sit there and look at some of those scenes and wonder, how in the hell did they do that? Right?
Yeah.
Because this was definitely before computers and CGI were a thing in movies. So.
Yeah. Or like this other one, The Fly. It's horrible
The
movie.
Fly.
Yeah. But the effects, man, looks. I remember watching it as a kid, and it was disgusting. But it's
that's more made. Of a well, it's supposed to be disgusting. That was it was designed to be body horror, is what they call it, right? It's when somebody's body is scaring you because it's going through whatever transformations or being infected by bugs, or I was never a fan of those kinds of films myself, but The Fly, as far as the effects in it, special effects are amazing in that thing too.
Yeah. What about video games? Are you into video games? What are your thoughts there?
I don't game much. And I'm not really a hardcore gamer at all. I don't own a lot of games. I have a Steam account, but I don't really own anything. I own City Skylines. I've played it. I've got a few other. I don't know. I really don't own any games. I do play some of the free and open source games that are available on Linux. Just because for a long time, that was all I had on Linux. We didn't have Steam. We had no games. We just had a few, mostly open source first-person shooters. I still play a lot of those. I play a little bit of a game called Sauerbraten. Fantastic game. Free and open source first-person shooter. Xenotic, another good first-person shooter, open source. And I do play a real-time strategy game called Zero AD. Also free and open source software. Just fantastic game. If you're a fan of the old like Age of Empires games, Zero AD is amazing.
Okay. This one?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't play because of time, or?
Yeah, you're right. I don't play because it takes a lot of time. Typically, I'm always doing something. And when I sit down to play a game, it's for like I'm really wore out from doing everything else going on. I just want to, for example, pull up a first-person shooter and frag as many people as I can for 15 minutes and then get out. I'm not one of these people that play like a RPG game that's like some of the massive multiplayer games that are going to take me 6 weeks to complete, and I got to spend 8 hours a day. No, not doing that.
Yeah, you have to choose your time, right?
Yeah, everything I play is something that can be done in a few minutes, or if it's like a game of Zero AD might run an hour. or so, depending on number of opponents and whether I'm winning or not. If I'm losing, it'll be over quick. So,
Yeah, makes sense. I feel the
Yeah.
same way. I'm like, I could be doing something else. That's what I think. I should be doing something else. I feel like I'm just not being, even though I'm not being productive doing something else, I feel like I could be doing something better. But that's just me, my personal feeling. And moving on to other topics, what's your IDE or editor of choice? Is it Emacs or?
Yeah, that's where I spend most of my time in is Emacs. I have Vim and Neovim installed on my system, and I do use them often too. It just depends. A lot of times, whatever I'm doing on camera, if I'm already in a terminal emulator and then I want to open something, I'll typically use Neovim for it. If I'm specifically doing something already using Emacs, then I'll be in Emacs. But I could use either one. But I mean, if I didn't do the YouTube channel, typically I'd probably just live in Emacs. I'd open Emacs full screen, and that would be my desktop environment. It would essentially be my operating system because, well, if I move to my screen here, I mean, a typical kind of Emacs workflow would be you open, well, let me make sure I'm on the right monitor here, open Emacs, and then I could navigate to anything I want to view. Maybe, I don't know, my qtile config, which is the window manager I'm in. It's my qtile config, which is written in org mode, by the way. I wrote the config. It actually, the source code blocks, you can see begin source Python. So I've got the Python code in the source code blocks, but the headers of the table of contents and the descriptions, these are all just part of the literate config, the org document. They don't get written to the proper config.py. But these source code blocks do. They get written to the actual config later when I save. But, you'll work in something, a text document. If I need a terminal, I could do, in my case, space TV is the key binding I have to toggle on vterm. Vterm is one of the terminal emulators here inside Emacs. If I need a proper terminal, this is a vterm using my shell, the fish shell, using my fish config and everything. So I've got a terminal inside Emacs if I need it. I don't really need another terminal.
Yeah, you don't need to go out. And I noticed that your headings in org mode are bigger because I know a little bit about org mode only. Like, is that a default thing in Emacs? Like, you can make the headings bigger?
There's nothing default in Emacs because you have to configure it yourself. So, no. Everything you see here, I had to do a settings for. Let me get into my Emacs config. I have a key binding to get into that config. It's my Emacs config. And if I go to the table of contents here, I've got a section, org mode, bullets. Here we go. So org bullets is the package that I installed to get the fancy bullets. Because otherwise, these would just be asterisks.
Okay.
This would be one asterisk. This would be two, but it condenses it to one character and then, the specific shape and color that I could set. And the same thing if I went down a third level, if I wanted a third level, right? Third level, whatever. But obviously, I don't want to do that to my config, but it would convert that to whatever symbol. Or as far as why the heading is bigger, that is in my fonts section. Let's see, fonts.
I did learn about this type of configuration because Joshua Blais mentioned it. I had a call with him and he showed me around Emacs. So what is this called again? Where you document and configure at the same time, right?
Literate.
Yeah,
it's a literate config. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's basically where you write something that serves as documentation, but it is also the source code for something as well. The blocks, in this case, what this does, the actual Emacs config is config.el. This file is config.org, though. Now, what it does is it writes all the source code blocks that are, Emacs list source code blocks. It writes that over to the config.el. So that's, but the headers and all of this, it doesn't do anything to those, which is great because if I go to my GitLab, go to my .files repository, for example.
Okay. So all of your Emacs config is in your .files in GitLab, right?
It is. Go to .config/Emacs. This is the folders where your Emacs config would be on a Linux system. And if I go to config.org, it's a proper document with a table of contents and, nice formatting and everything. You can actually read it. Mm-hmm. Now, these blocks are the actual source code blocks for the file config.el. Like if you want to go read that, you could go read that. But who wants to do that, right? It's much easier to read the config.org, right? Especially if you don't know anything about Emacs. Yeah. Because, I'm pretty wordy as far as describing things. Like I tell you, hey, this block, this is what I'm doing. That's why I wrote this block this way. This package, this is what this package does. Yada, 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 right? I think some of them I even write tables for key bindings and things, things that are not part of the actual source code, but, help people, read right here. This is a table. Hey, I install this package, org tempo. You don't know what it does? Well, here's what it does. Type your less than sign A and then tab, and it's going to add this into the file. This block here. So actually, I can show you that. If you're the source code blocks, if I want to add one, let me do the less than sign S and hit tab.
Oh.
There's my source block.
Snippet.
Yeah. And then what am I writing? Well, in this case, I would be writing Emacs list, but I could, obviously do something like Bash or Python or Haskell, whatever it is, whatever it is you're trying to write. Let me undo all of that because this is my proper config.
It seems extremely useful, actually. And how did you make the headings bigger then? Is this?
This is it. This block that I was searching for. Org level headers. So there is these variables here, org level 1 through 7. And I set them to various heights. 1.7 for the top level. So that would be top level. This.
Okay.
And then, org level 2 would be these. Org level 3, which I don't think I have a lot of third level things in this document. But I mean, we could quickly add some. Right? And 4th. And 5. And so forth, 6. Yada, yada, yada. Just, it makes this, much easier to read. There's also similar variables for those of you that like to play in Markdown. You can also set the headers in a Markdown document in Emacs to be variable in size.
Oh, for Markdown files. Okay. Yeah. But that is possible in Emacs because in Neovim, people have asked, I'm going to switch to my screen real quick. In Neovim, I can't, right? So, or at least, I don't know, maybe it's possible. I don't know. So I had to, set the background for the different headings. That's the way I can tell, okay, heading level 2, heading level 3 by the colors. I leave the number on the left side of it, but having a bigger font is also pretty useful, right? So,
and if you prefer, instead of doing the bigger font, if you prefer doing background colors, you certainly can theme things in that way. You can actually see, probably barely, because it's just a slight hinting. My source code blocks are a little darker than the rest.
Yeah, you can see it.
So, but you can also set that for some people that have their cursor line, a different color, so it's obvious where the cursor is. In my case, I have my cursor blinking when it moves. That way I know where it's at. But it's all available.
Okay.
One thing with Emacs, the reason I get this variable font size is because Emacs is an actual graphical application. It's a GUI window, not a terminal. Where a terminal, unfortunately, the limitation of a terminal is everything has to be the same size font. You can't have variable font sizes in a terminal, unfortunately. So, and if I used Emacs, Emacs does have a terminal version. If in case you're stuck in a TTY, you can actually run Emacs inside a terminal, but it would have the same limitations of something like Vim or Neovim. You're not going to get the fancy bullets and everything in the TTY.
Okay, makes sense.
if you're in a bind, you're stuck in a TTY, it doesn't really matter. You're not worried about images and things in a TTY.
Why do you go out of Emacs though? Like, why not, like you said, right? Why do you sometimes go out of Emacs and do stuff in the terminal?
Well, a lot of what I do on camera is stuff I'm doing at the shell anyway. And I'm going to spend almost all my time in a terminal. So I don't launch Emacs just to then launch it. Like I'll just launch my terminal. You know, like a lot of the videos I do. So just me launching a terminal, zooming way in, and discussing whatever. I'm going to do a tutorial today on various core utilities, whatever it happens to be, ls or CP for copy and MV for, I do all this in a terminal. There's no reason for me to be in Emacs for this. I'm not ever going to edit text. A lot of the other stuff that comes with Emacs, it's got Git clients and things like that. I'm not doing any of that kind of stuff because Emacs really, once you've configured it with all that crap, it's really an IDE. And if all I need is a terminal, I'm just going to open the terminal.
Okay.
In this case, I'm using Alacritty for the terminal here.
Alacritty. Okay, that's a good point to touch. Why Alacritty? Why haven't you moved on to something else? Because everyone's like, now Ghosty. That's like the trend topic, Ghosty. Before that, what was it? Western, Kitty? Why Alacritty?
Yeah, I've played with all of them. I did a video recently about Ghosty, and it's okay. My thing with Alacritty, a lot of times with my terminals, the way I use them, I want an empty frame. I don't want any title bars, headers, or anything. I just want a plain terminal window that's simple to configure. The Alacritty configuration files, really easy to work with if you want to add key bindings or theme it, like with my colors. You saw the color scheme. Basically the same color scheme I use in Emacs and everywhere else got going on in Alacritty. But it just works. One of the things with Alacritty, I first tried it out like 4 or 5 years ago. I made a video about it. And Alacritty was still kind of new at the time. I might have been part of the reason why Alacritty has become kind of popular because that video got a lot of views at the time. And it kind of, a lot of people have tried Alacritty since then. It's like the default terminal emulator on some Linux distributions. Like it's really become kind of a standard. One of the cool things with it was Unicode support. I don't know if you use a lot of weird like Unicode glyphs and symbols in your terminal, but some terminal emulators really suck at displaying some of that. A lot of the older terminal emulators that people were using before, things like Alacritty and Kitty and wterm came along, xterm gets installed. Well, it's not really installed with the X11 server, but usually you're going to install xterm. At least that was kind of a de facto standard, say 20 years ago on Linux. Xterm sucks for Unicode support. There's going to be a lot of weird things that you're going to try to display in that terminal, and it just can't display it. Can't render. URXVT is another very popular terminal emulator that was really maybe the most popular terminal emulator when I got started on Linux, especially from like the people that were tiling window manager user, people that lived in the terminal. That was the one they all promoted, URXVT. It probably has the worst Unicode support of any terminal emulator I've ever tried. Its claim to fame was it was fast and it had a daemon associated with it. So there was always this URXVT server running in the background. So it's a server-client relationship with your Windows, which made your terminals launch faster. Great. But it also made, hey, when one terminal window crashed, and they're all part of the server-client relationship, all your terminal windows crash. So you don't like that aspect with it. So yeah, Alacritty it solved a lot of problems when it came out, right? It was so much better than a lot of the stuff that was around. And obviously, it's very popular. It sees a lot of development. And it doesn't come with a lot of the extra bells and whistles I don't need. I know a lot of people really like terminal emulators that have splits and tabs.
Yep.
I've never needed. I've never, because if you really need a split or a tab, we have things like TMUX and GNU Screen for multiplexing. If you really need it, if you're in a TTY. most of the time I'm not in a TTY, and I use a tiling window manager.
Mm-hmm.
If I need a split, I just open a second terminal, right? I don't need, like if I'm looking at my screen right now. So if I need terminals, yeah, I've got all the terminals available in my window manager, which, I mean, can manage those things just as good as buffers and splits. And that's another thing. If I'm in a terminal and I'm in either Vim or Emacs, I don't need the terminal to manage any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is probably just what you've grown used to. Like if you've always used splits and tabs in a terminal, I guess that's what you're used to. For me, I've always used other things for that kind of stuff if I needed it.
Yep.
So
I used tabs in the past in terminals. I used a macOS terminal. It's called iterm2. Then I met other terminals, Alacritty. I installed Alacritty. I loved it, but I had to use TMUX, right? Because I'm in macOS.
TMUX.
So I'm a huge TMUX fan. I use TMUX. What I love the most about TMUX is sessions, right? Because that's what allows me to switch between projects, right? So here I'm in my notes with a single key press, right? I'm in my dot files, right? If I type that other key press, or I can jump back to my notes or to my home directory. So that's why I love TMUX, and I love Alacritty. I used it for a long time because I didn't need, like you said, I didn't need tabs. I don't like tabs in the terminal. I didn't need panes because I have TMUX for that, you know?
Yeah, and that was with other terminals that did come with that stuff out of the box. I always turned them off anyway. So it's just nice not to have to fool with turning that stuff off, like scroll bars and all that. I don't need any of that.
Yeah, but I guess it's really complicated for terminal creators because Alacritty users will want tabs. And I know that Alacritty is like, nope, no tabs, no panes. So it must be really difficult to deal with that in the community, right? Because people always want the features that they want.
Well, I thought, I don't follow development of Alacritty, but I thought at least a couple of years ago, there was some talk about them adding tabs. I don't know if they may have even added it. I don't know. I wouldn't use it anyway, so I don't know. But I know they'd been talking about adding tabs. As far as splits, I don't know. But again, this is a problem that's already kind of solved. Like on Linux, every Linux distribution, for the most part, there's a few exceptions, probably already installed TMUX for you. It's there. Just type TMUX in your terminal, and hey, now you get your tabs if you want them.
You're good to go. What are your thoughts on TMUX? Do you use it a lot?
I don't use it a ton because, again, I don't necessarily need it. Being in a tiling window manager most of the time, or being in Emacs most of the time, I've already got multiplexers. The TMUX becomes kind of redundant in that case. If I'm in a TTY, I will sometimes use it. I don't actually use it, though, for splits and tabs. That's not why I use it in the TTY. In the TTY, I use it because I want scroll back, right? Because you don't get the text scroll back in a TTY, but in TMUX you do. So,
and you can select and copy text. Yep.
Right.
Makes sense. For your configuration, which is Emacs, your main editor, or Neovim, either or, do you use your own config or do you use a distribution as a starting point?
No, that's my Emacs config.
Yeah, from scratch.
But I've used some of the various distributions of Emacs and Neovim. People ask me to try them out. I actually lived in Doom Emacs for at least a year or two at one point. And that's a really good distribution of Emacs for Vim users because it already will have things like evil mode and everything already set up out of the box. And it's not very different from my config because I like Doom Emacs so much, I basically made my Emacs do a lot of the stuff Doom was doing anyway. Some things are different, obviously, but Doom Emacs is great for people that don't want to start writing an Emacs config from scratch. Because it can be daunting. Yep. You got to write something. You got to write it in Emacs Lisp. Okay, well, I don't know any Emacs Lisp. If you're brand new, right? Just like you can't do that, right? But it's not as hard as a lot of people think. If you've got any experience in programming at all, Emacs Lisp is pretty easy to wrap your head around. And there's plenty of tutorials and videos. Hell, I've made dozens of Emacs configuration kind of videos to help people. Same thing with Vim as well, for people trying to get into Vim and Neovim. These things are not as complicated. The great thing about Vim and Neovim, though, I don't actually need to configure them to use them. Like when I do a fresh Linux installation, maybe setting up a web server or something, and if Vim or Neovim is there, I can just use it. I don't have to configure it to you. Emacs is very different. It's like you got to configure. But the thing with Emacs, a lot of people don't realize this because I get this question all the time. Well, I can't switch from Vim to Emacs because what if I'm remote into some server that doesn't have Emacs? It doesn't matter. You remote from your machine that has Emacs on it from inside Emacs, and you can still use your Emacs on this machine, but you're SSH'd into the.
So you can use it as an SSH client as well.
Yes,
Emacs.
it's already built in, and you don't even have to configure that. It's already there for it. If I give it an address, instead of a file name, I give it an SSH address. Yeah, I'm and I've got the password. Obviously, you got But if you can, now when I look at Dired, the file manager inside Emacs, I'm actually looking at the file system of the remote machine now and editing files on it.
And I assume you can also configure SSH key-based authentication in Emacs, right?
Sure.
I would assume. Yep. Okay. Interesting. Okay. What tool do you use in Emacs to push to GitLab? Is the one that you use?
I don't actually use Emacs for my Git client. I have used it. I've done videos about it. The reason I don't is because I've kind of got an exotic setup for my dot files. I use a Git bear repository to manage my dot files, and the Emacs client, Magit, Magit, doesn't like bear repositories. It doesn't handle them well. So for my dot files, I would have to go to a terminal and just use my regular
commands
for that, which is mostly what I push is to my dot files. I've got other projects too, but if I'm going to do that, I just use the terminal and Git for everything instead of Magit. If I didn't have that Git bear repository managing my dot files, I'd probably just do all of it in Git, in Magit inside Emacs. So it's a really fantastic Git client. You just learn the key bindings, for adding and commit. You type your message inside Emacs, Control C, and it pushes it. It's just magic. So it's really it's a nice Git client. For what I have, I can't really use it.
Okay. We've been here for an hour. How much time do you have longer?
We can go a little longer. Feel free. Shoot away.
Okay. Yeah, because we're here to talk about. I want some advice. I just want to hear your thoughts on macOS. Let's go with that first.
So my thoughts on macOS is I haven't used it. It's like OS 10, the modern versions of Mac that have been around for a long time now. I actually haven't used Mac OS 10. Never had a Mac computer. I've used OS 10 in a virtual machine a time or two, but I have no real thoughts. The last time I used a Mac computer was, probably the late 90s. So I can't really speak on the operating system itself too much, other than I know now, just like even then, back in the 90s, it's a very kind of walled garden sort of ecosystem. You're not allowed to change much. It's kind of very rigid, not very flexible. And that was that case even in the 1990s compared to something like Microsoft Windows, which has its own set of problems too. But for somebody like me that loves customizing every little thing about the operating system, it would be totally the wrong operating system for me to use, just because I would start with something that I've got to completely tear down.
Yeah.
And there's Linux distributions like that as well. Ubuntu, great Linux distribution. I'm not going to use the GNOME desktop environment or any of the stuff that they ship with, a lot of the applications and stuff they ship out of the box. So why would I install that? Right. So I would install it to uninstall everything I just installed. Well, I could start with something minimal, for example, like Ubuntu server, right? And then install the window manager and everything, Emacs and everything I want to use, or a Debian server installation rather than the Debian with the GNOME desktop. Or in my case, where I'm most comfortable these days, Arch Linux, just because Arch Linux is for those people that want to customize everything anyway. Instead of giving you something already pre-configured on Arch, you don't get anything except what you want. Right? So there's nothing on this operating system that I didn't want.
You touched you touched Debian there in Ubuntu. I use Linux all the time, but only in servers, SSH and, no desktop environment at all. My distribution of choice is Debian, always in servers. What are your thoughts there? Because Ubuntu is the popular one, and everyone uses Ubuntu. Documentation, videos, everything is Ubuntu related. What are your thoughts there?
Debian's still a very popular server distro. It's just Ubuntu adds a lot of extra tools that make things so much easier than Debian as far as configuring certain things. Because there's a corporation behind Ubuntu, Canonical, and they know a lot of the things people are doing. Like if you're setting up a web server, they've already got their little tools and things, little programs you can run to help automate various things, like setting up, I don't know, your lamp stack or whatever it is you're doing. That it's one command, you're done. Kind of thing. Where in Debian, you got to go through some work to install various things, then work with those config files. Which, hey, you know how to do it. It's not like it's a lot of extra work. But it does save you some time sometimes if you want to just quickly spin up something. Setting up Ubuntu server can be very quick. Also, not everybody loves Ubuntu and snap packaging, but the reason snap packages exist on Ubuntu is because of server. Snaps on a server make a lot of sense. For example, I use Nextcloud. I use Nextcloud to file sync between all of my devices and stuff. Been using Nextcloud for a while. I run that on Ubuntu server, and I installed it using the snap package in Nextcloud. Why? It's because I could sudo snap install Nextcloud and be done. Because it installs the entire web server and all for you, all part of this container, right? And otherwise, it's a much more involved process getting Nextcloud up and running.
Yeah. That's the thing with Debian as well. I use Debian, but what I do is I install Docker, and every application that I need to install is done through Docker. I install Kubernetes as well. I was playing around with Kubernetes, and I deploy applications. So I don't rely on Debian too much, because Docker is there, Kubernetes is there. I got the images already. They run quite well. But I have had to install stuff manually in the past as well in Debian. A lot of dependencies, a lot of issues.
Yes. It's not as big of an issue as it used to be, but I remember years ago, because I was mainly a Debian / Ubuntu user. Most of the time I've been running Linux. I've been primarily an Arch user since I started the YouTube channel, 8 years ago, because for the kind of work I do on camera, I wanted the latest packages for various things. And there were programs that I needed that wouldn't be in the Debian repos because Debian's too damn old, right? So that's why I started using Arch. And these days, I mean, if I didn't do YouTube and sometimes need the latest and greatest things sometimes for various things I'm doing on camera, I probably just install Debian stable or Ubuntu LTS, very similar. And then my favorite window manager on top of it, whatever, Emacs and whatever. And I'd be perfectly happy. I don't need a rolling release necessarily if I didn't do this. Because I do this, then I kind of need it. Yeah.
When you retire, then
when I retire from YouTube, I'm putting Debian back on my computer.
Okay. And what I use is macOS. That's what I'm recording this on right now. That's how I have my phone connected. I don't have a camera. My phone is actually my camera. It's my iPhone connects to the computer. I open OBS, works. I update macOS, even to newer versions. I update the apps because I install all of them through Homebrew, right? That's the package manager you get in macOS. So I install them that way. I upgrade the packages or apps, and it just works. It has not broken on me, at least in the past, I don't know, 3 years or so. And I've been thinking about Linux. I want to try Linux, because like you said, macOS is great. It has gotten a lot better. Now you can install window managers. There's a few options and they work quite well. But it's very limited, the things that you can still do. You can still customize it a lot. If you look at my screen, it doesn't look like macOS too much. It looks, I don't know, like, let me switch to it real quick. Somewhat of a Linux distro or something. I don't know. Something strange. There's something going on there. People think. Yeah. But I want that experience in Linux, and I've been thinking about trying it. Yeah. You get a lot of advice. People tell you Arch. A lot of people mention Fedora, right? And I've seen that Fedora is shipped with this framework laptops. So I guess it must be stable. What are your recommendations? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. If you're looking for something that's really stable, Debian stable and Ubuntu LTS kind of where you want to be. Fedora, it's much more of a experimental playing ground sometimes, where they'll introduce new features and things that aren't necessarily all that well tested. So you will run into that problem on Fedora. It's not a rolling release, but sometimes they will push out some new features, and basically you become the beta tester. So it's not something that I would say just breaks all the time, but you can experience some break. You can experience breakage on everything, I guess.
Yep.
But yeah, I've run Fedora before. It's a fine distribution as well.
So which one would you choose? Fedora? Because Debian, well, I could get Debian. I could install OBS there, I assume. I don't know if it's going to be a really old version or...
Well, it will be at least 2 years old now, because as the new version of Debian dropped, you're about to get a new version if you install, what is it, Debian 13? What version are they on now? The new version of Debian is getting close for a release date, though.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if it's not available now, then you've got to install the last Debian that came out more than a year ago. Yeah, that's not going to be the newest version of OBS. But here's the thing: things like snaps, flatpaks, and app images, those have solved that problem. If you need something on Debian that you absolutely need to always have on the latest version, just install Flatpak and install OBS through the Flatpak, because I believe the OBS team actually builds the Flatpak, like it's their Flatpak. So, and that's typically what I try to do. If they have an official package that they build themselves, I really don't care what format, snaps, flatpaks, app images, whatever. And if I know the team behind it built that package, I'll go grab that package.
So I could
all of those have the ability to auto update, so you don't have to worry about updating the program.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so I could have Debian stable
and still the latest OBS.
Okay, and the latest of the packages. What's the drawback of these flatpaks? Are these like containerized applications?
Yeah. That's why you can get the latest, is because they'll have all the libraries and everything, all its dependencies contained within itself. That way you don't run into the dependency hill issue where you have to go compile things from source, and then I also need to go compile this other thing and the next thing, and then all of a sudden you've got this weird dependency loop where this thing depends on this program. It's no longer here, not available, not the right version, and then you end up with a situation where your system is essentially broken because you can't update anything because all the dependencies are screwed up. So
makes sense. So are there any
Is there a drawback? I have not. On some programs, I guess there could be, if they need to break out of the container to interact with certain devices or other programs on the system. Sometimes it can be an issue for some things. I can tell you OBS is not a problem as a flatpak.
Wonderful. Okay.
Because probably most people that install OBS probably install the flatpak because it is an official package that they maintain and that they push. They try to tell everybody, go install the flatpak because we're building that. So if there's a problem with that package, we built it, so we're responsible for it. Don't come and complain that you installed whatever's in the Debian repo, or.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not into distro hopping. If I'm going to install something, it's just gonna be what I will use. I'm not gonna go and try other distributions. I don't care, to be honest, So just
at the end of the day, they're all the same under the hood, depending on your workflow. For me, if I'm spending most of my time in a text editor like Emacs,
yep,
in the terminal,
yep,
and interact, for most things, I just open terminals and run various command line utilities I know how to use anyway. And no matter what Linux distro you install, you're going to have the shell and the coreutils. And probably Vim will be there. You go ahead and install Neovim or Emacs, whatever else you want. It becomes pointless to distro hop if you're that kind of user, because you're getting the exact same experience no matter what distro you're running. The only difference is the repos of software. Does it have all the programs you want, and what version are they on? On Arch, I'll have the thing that came out this morning, right?
Yeah.
Which may or may not be what you want. On Debian, you'll have the thing that came out 2 years ago, which may or may not be what you want. So, and then there's stuff in between those two extremes.
You could install Neovim as a flatpak as well in
I would imagine. You could. I'm not sure if it would be something that's all that necessary, but I'm sure you could.
Okay.
I mean, does Neovim have a lot of major changes you'd want to keep up with?
There's the latest release, 0.11, I think it is. It was, I don't know, a few months ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they would probably have a flatpak. I would bet they do. Because these days, some distributions are trying to basically have everything containerized. So even if they didn't build a flatpak for it, somebody has built a flatpak of Neovim. So yeah, I'm sure you could find it.
Okay. And there's like a rivalry between these two communities, Linux and macOS. Well, people are switching between macOS, Linux a lot of the time because they're Unix, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a real rivalry there. I think as far as for the Linux community, as far as who they dislike, Microsoft, because macOS has never really tried to damage Linux in any way or attack it in any way. Microsoft was against Linux from the beginning, and they tried to kill it. And there's a lot, how Microsoft and some of their business practices, how they treated various open source projects over the years before they all of a sudden, we love open source. Well, you didn't last month when you ran this other open source company into the ground, ran them out of business, and you called Linux cancer. That was that Steve Ballmer, that Linux is cancer.
Yeah. Now you see.
He said open source is cancer. He didn't like the licensing, I think, or maybe Linux because it was open source is cancer. One of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now
you see WSL, right? They're all in for WSL.
Now everything they do is licensed under the MIT license, and they got on their little homepage, I heart Linux, Microsoft hearts Linux, or whatever. I'm like, yeah. But you know what? I give them credit. I give Satya Nadella and the new guys over at Microsoft. Like I actually think that's a good thing, and I don't mind when companies that I thought were doing the wrong thing in the past start doing the right thing, regardless of the reasons. The reasons, obviously, is it makes them money now, open source, right? They see money in it. That's why they're doing it. I don't care about their motivation behind it. I'm just happy that they're on board. Obviously, they're one of the largest contributors to the Linux Foundation, the Linux kernel development. They have a ton of people on Microsoft's paid staff that work on the Linux kernel. Like, hey, that's all great. I can't complain about any of that.
What do you think life would be? Because before they went with their DOS thing, they were Xenix, right? And it was Unix based. What do you think if they would still be Unix based, like Microsoft?
It'd probably still end up in the same place it is now. I mean, Unix was the same. Unix was a proprietary operating system. It had this was before open source was even a thing. The old Unixy days back in the 1970s and 80s. Obviously, it wasn't really until Richard Stallman in the late 70s kind of started the whole free software thing. But really, it wasn't until he founded the GNU project in the mid 80s that kind of codified this whole free and open source software that we know today with the GPL license and, all of that, the GNU manifesto. So yeah, just because they would have adopted like a proprietary Unix operating system instead of creating their own proprietary operating system, Microsoft Windows would probably still look and function exactly the way it does today. They still would have done all the things they wanted to do. They just would have started with a different base.
Yeah.
It would be in no way compatible with any modern Unix-like operating system.
Yeah.
Very similar to like Mac OS X. It's based on FreeBSD. It is in no way compatible with anything that FreeBSD is doing these days. All right, they've gone completely. At some point you got to diverge a little bit, and in this case, in your hypothetical example of 40 years of diverging, they wouldn't be. It wouldn't remotely look anything like Unix. So.
At least you could log into the terminal in Windows and run the ls command instead of their.
Well, now instead of actually, we do have the dir command in Linux.
In Linux,
it's actually part of the new coreutils.
Oh,
well, I don't know why you would run it because it's basically ls with a certain flag. It's a very simple ls, but it's there for compatibility reasons, I guess, because Windows users they I guess they don't know about the ls command. So.
Oh, and what are your thoughts on these other companies like System 76 in the framework? Because if I get hardware, I don't want to invest the time into seeing what's compatible. Maybe everything is compatible nowadays. It was not back in the day when I played with Linux, and I'm talking about, I don't know, 15 years ago.
It's a lot different now.
Yeah,
a lot different. It's the Linux kernel and all the drivers and everything that's baked into it. Of course, people complain about the Linux kernel just being millions and millions of lines of code. Well, part of that is it's very hard to find a machine that Linux doesn't run on. It's easily the operating system that's going to support the most hardware just by the nature of the size of the thing. And so many people are working on it. The fact that it's built for servers and desktops and mobile devices and IoT, like it's built for everything. So 15 years ago, I guess it was possible to go find machines that didn't quite work right on Linux,
or a few things didn't work, like
for a few
your
things,
Wi-Fi or some.
Well,
small perks,
Wi-Fi
right?
was the big one. Wi-Fi was the big one because the Wi-Fi drivers, the chips, was it the what was the Wi-Fi chips? Realtek.
Yep.
Those drivers were proprietary. Because they're proprietary, they weren't in the Linux kernel, so it's not something that would ship out of the box that would just work. You'd have to go get that proprietary driver yourself and install it however you could install. And how do you download it? I mean, you don't have Wi-Fi, right? So like it was a pain in the ass. But now there's not a lot of that headache anymore as far as like Wi-Fi chips and graphics drivers and things. Like graphics drivers were another problem, especially like 20 years ago. That's not a problem anymore. But as far as the companies you asked about, System 76, I've never dealt with them. I don't know. I've never had their hardware, never tested anything. So I can't comment on them. I think it's great that companies are selling devices that already have Linux pre-installed. And there's a lot of companies that do that now. But I've never bought from a company that specifically catered to Linux. Well, I won't say that. I have bought from a few like smaller boutique, like custom computer shops, and they asked me what operating system to put on it. I already know I'm going to wipe out Windows if they ship Windows. So hey, don't put an operating system on it because I'm going to install Linux. Some of them actually say, oh, well, we can install Ubuntu on it. Well, okay. you can do that. I'm probably still going to wipe out Ubuntu because I'm going to put something, but it's less of a headache to hop from another Linux than, from Windows, because Windows, you're going to have to go in the BIOS and, hey, please let me uninstall you, right?
Yeah.
Because they try to make it impossible for you to wipe it out. So,
okay. Last two questions that I have for you. Last two topics that I want to cover. One of them, well, three, real quick. Let's try to keep it fast. What are your thoughts on Windows?
Oh, so Windows is another operating system that I haven't really spent much time in the last, say, 16, 18 years. The last time I had a machine that ran Windows was, I think, in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And I switched to Linux on all my machines as far as desktop computers. And the little bit I played on servers, because I was kind of a nerd even back in the 90s, playing with web servers, especially in the early days of the internet, the birth of the World Wide Web. I wanted to be one of those people that, building websites and things. And even back then, a lot of web servers were Linux. So I knew what Linux was going back, in like the mid 1990s. I switched to Linux full time on the desktop in 2008 because I had a Windows computer that was running Windows XP. It was taken over by ransomware. The hacker took over my computer. He wouldn't give it back unless I paid him some money. He said, you know what? Got this Ubuntu CD. Popped it in.
So you gotta thank that guy then.
Yeah. Well, I knew what Linux was. That's why I had the Ubuntu CD anyway. I played with Linux anyway. But he gave me a reason to, hey, I'm not paying you money for your antivirus to remove there's no way in hell I'm doing that. So I just resolved myself to the fact, hey, everything on this computer I'm losing. I'm formatting the drive right now, put Ubuntu on it, and went on. went on like it never happened. So, and that was in 2008. And even back then, it seems like so long ago, it was a really smooth experience for me. I really didn't have any headaches or any issues. A lot of the software I was using, though, I was already using on Microsoft Windows, because even on Windows, I wanted to use open source software. I was already using Firefox as a browser. I was already using LibreOffice, which wasn't LibreOffice then, it was OpenOffice. It was before the fork. But open source software, I was using GIMP instead of Photoshop and things like that. So a lot of that stuff I was using on Windows. When I got to Linux, they already installed all this for me, like this, their default programs for the most part. So it made it a little easier for me, where a lot of people will have proprietary software that they're used to. That a lot of times it's Windows only software. Where if you primarily use open source software, there's always a Linux version. Like usually they develop it for Linux. And maybe they'll port it to Windows because Windows has all the market share. They got to eventually, but we'll always have it on Linux usually though. There's there's just a handful of things I think I've ever come across that were open source software that only had a Windows version and didn't have a Linux version. Oddly enough, proprietary software, you run into that problem all the time, but free and open source software. Matter of fact, off the top of my head, I can only think of one really popular program that's free and open source software that doesn't have a Linux version. It's Windows only, and that's Notepad++.
Oh, it doesn't have a Linux version?
No, I guess because it's so tied into the Windows operating system in some ways. It's designed to be a replacement for their text editor, their Notepad, but it's GPL software, and it's Windows only.
Yeah.
So, which is really weird, but that's kind of the oddball. And we don't need Notepad++ on Linux. We got a million text editors.
Yeah, true. And do you have a special keyboard, or what do you use for your keyboard?
On this computer, I use the ZSA Moonlander.
Okay.
I've got videos about a lot of the ZSA keyboards because I bought a few of them. I use the Moonlander on this computer here, the workstation here at my office where I record. At home, I've got the ZSA ErgoDocs, which I use.
Okay.
Behind me, you probably can't see it in this frame. I have a ZSA Plank, which they've since discontinued. It's a little 40% keyboard. I use it sometimes to travel with. It's actually really great to just plug into your phone if you want a real keyboard.
I see it here. Let's see. This one. Okay.
Yeah, they don't make that one anymore. The latest one they're on, they don't have, they do a lot of split keyboards. I really like their split keyboards. The Moonlander and the ErgoDocs, great. They have a new split keyboard that they're pushing now that looks really awesome. I I haven't had the opportunity to buy one yet because I've already spent like more than $1,000 on these things.
Yeah. They're quite expensive.
The Voyager. Yeah, the Voyager is the new. Yeah.
Yeah.
But great keyboards. Cool company. The people there have always been nice to me. I made some videos about their products in the past, so they know who I am, and they like that I like their keyboards. Right? I send them some business. Like,
yeah.
Matter of fact, I guess they like the fact that I made videos about their products so much. One year, I think it was 2 years ago, they sent me a Christmas card.
Uh-huh.
Like a Christmas card, a thank you, and like a little gift with it or something. It's a small little gift.
Nice.
I was like, oh, that's nice. That because companies don't really do stuff like that anymore. But it's a smaller kind of company, I guess. And
okay. And what layout do you use? You use QWERTY or you use one of the exotic, keyboard layouts?
QWERTY, because obviously with the Vim motions and everything, I don't want to mess all of that up.
Yeah, me too. QWERTY.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I'm not going to move to something like Dvorak or Colmac, because now HJKNL that doesn't make any sense anymore. And
yep.
I would have like a million key bindings and Emacs to go back and change, and it's not worth it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on HomeLabs? That's the final question that I have. Are you into homelabbing?
I don't have a home lab myself, as far as this whole home lab thing. I guess it's kind of a recent phenomenon. I didn't even know the word until about a year or so ago, when it was like the new buzzword people were talking about. It's basically, I've got some servers at home.
Yep.
It's like, well, I mean, I kind of play with that kind of stuff anyway, but now a lot of the people that do the home lab stuff, I understand why they do it. Things like media servers, which I'm not really interested in. It doesn't really do much for me. Setting up a NAS would be cool because of video storage. I wouldn't mind doing something like that. Or, I mean, would I really want to host my own Nextcloud server? I'd rather host that on a proper web host, instead of doing that myself. And there's not a lot of things I would want locally. Wouldn't mind doing the NAS server, though. NAS server would be cool.
Yep, I do have HomeLab. It's not complicated stuff. I have 3 of those microcomputers, the Dell micros. Let me see if these pretty small. They don't make noise. They're wonderful. So I have 3 of those, and 128 gigs of RAM in total. And I do have my storage server set up that way. I have a Gluster Cluster, basically. So if I lose one of my 3 storage servers, I have them here. Where are they? VMs. These are my storage servers, storage 1, 2, and 3, right? So I can lose one of them and I can still keep it working. I know I should be using something else like Ceph, but man, that's too complicated for me. I just went with Gluster. Works fine. I use it just as a Samba server, basically. So just to store my videos, right? Just keep them there.
Right.
To keep, just to store information, basically. But yep.
It's something I should do some days. It's something I've been thinking about really since starting the YouTube channel, is having a file server, some storage for my videos. I just use Amazon. I just use AWS.
It's reliable for sure.
And it's so damn cheap.
Yeah.
And I've got, terabytes and terabytes of video sitting there. And what do they charge? Like a few bucks a month for it? Like something crazy small. I was like, you know what? There's no reason not to use it. Yeah. You're right. They're reliable, much more reliable than I would be.
Yeah.
So
that's for sure. Definitely. That's one of my fears, that I'm not as reliable as Amazon. So it could all be gone in a couple minutes, compared to Amazon.
Yeah. I like storing that stuff. Every video I make, I always, when I upload it to YouTube, upload it to Amazon, just as a backup in case YouTube deletes a video for unknown reason, deletes my channel for some weird reason, or just YouTube goes away completely. I want all of that stuff. That's one of the reasons why I'm on Odysee.
Oh, makes sense.
It's just I've got all of my videos in 2 different places, just in case. It's there online for people to go watch. Yeah, YouTube though, these days isn't too bad about accidentally taking videos down for no reason. They used to be much worse, especially in the Linux space. When I first started, Linux was smaller. It's a community of hackers, right? And it's evil people. But but there was one year, the first or second year of me after I started the channel, where I had probably 100 straight videos that were instantly demonetized as soon as I uploaded them. Just
for no reason.
as soon as you upload it, it's demonetized. Yeah. And you got to go appeal. And then they'd always overturn it because there's no reason for these things to be. What am I doing? Writing some bash script, writing some Python. Well, configuring a tiling window manager. Ooh, evil. So you'd appeal, and they always overturn it. Like 2 or 3 days later, take them a couple of days. Well, what happens when you upload a video? When do most of the views come in?
Yeah, when you upload it. Yep.
Yeah, first day or two. So after a couple of days, you monetize my video. Well, thank you. Everybody's already watched the damn thing. Now nobody's going to.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So,
have you had any strikes in YouTube?
Nothing that was a real strike, but yeah, there's things you appeal and they get overturned.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's unfortunate that you get some false strikes on occasion. I had 2 or 3. Again, there weren't anything. Hell, I don't typically even use like foul language or anything on my videos. Nothing to actually really strike me for. But I've had a couple of, I guess, something tripped up the algorithm in some way. And it's like, hey, you can appeal. They give you a little link and you just say, whatever it is you're saying I did here, it really didn't happen. And then I guess a human being's supposed to go look at the video. And if they do, they always overturn it. It's like, yeah.
They take them off then.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Anything else? I already took a lot of your time, and thanks for all this time.
This was fun. Yeah, I mean, I had a busy morning this morning because I had I actually run a second YouTube channel that's not Linux related. It's
oh really? You want to share?
Trading related. Yeah, it's DT Options.
DT Options.
It's about options trading. Yeah.
Oh, but this one?
Yeah, I hold a little group session there on most days, Monday through Friday, in a trading Discord group that I run. I was doing that this morning, and then I was also working on trying to get the latest ISO of the Linux distribution I've been working on here recently, DTOS, which essentially you saw on camera is what I'm essentially running here.
Oh.
So, trying to work on that. So yeah, I had a lot going on this morning. I know it probably was running a little later than what you wanted as far as jumping on this call and getting this done, but
no, it was.
Hopefully it worked out.
It did, and I really want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it because I know it's a lot of work. You must be pretty busy. So thanks for taking the time and joining the call. Any final words, anything you want to share before we finish the call?
No, just thanks for having me. This was a fun discussion, and if you ever want to do it again or you want to come on my channel, we expose you to a bigger audience.
Oh, that would be awesome. So
well, hit me up. You've got my email now, so.
Yeah, appreciate it, Derek.
All right. Peace.
Nice talking to you. Bye.
Bye.